I'm a fifth-generation Canadian.
Wow.
My ancestors came here from Ireland in about 1820 and arrived in Quebec. They later moved to Eastern Ontario, where they became landowners. Must have prospered pretty well. But then the next generation, which would be my great-grandfather, decided there was better land in this area, and they began to move this way. And my great-grandfather bought 100 acres of land on the county line and bought it from the Crown in the late 1800s.
Wow.
He had 11 children, one of whom was my grandfather, and my grandfather built that house in about 1893. I only know that date, and that was the date of his first marriage. And that picture was taken about 1915. It's not dated, but there's it's difficult to see, but there's a small child in the middle of the picture. And knowing the age of that child.
That her? Or him?
In between, there's a small child.
Oh my gosh, there is.
Yeah.
She blends in.
Right. So that sort of dates the picture.
And so who are the three in the photo?
My grandmother, my aunt, and my aunt.
Oh, wow.
Interestingly enough, to complete the family, there's my grandfather, my father, and his brother. They're not in the picture. So
It was a ladies only picture.
well, I have a whole lot of questions about that if you would like to hear this whole story.
Sure.
This was taken by a traveling photographer.
Okay.
And the information I get from the museum in St. Mary's is that he would travel by horse and buggy and take these pictures and send those glass slides back to his wife in St. Mary's, and she did all the development.
Oh, my.
And this says that you could get copies of this for 50 cents. I'm not sure how to convert that, but I think today that would be $25 or $50.
That would be good money, yes.
Anyway, I didn't ask enough questions when I was a kid. My dad might have been able to tell me this, but I wonder now, since the men are not in the picture, are they busy out working, or did they not know the picture was being taken?
Or is there another photo that just the men are in the photo, but maybe they never purchased it?
I doubt that. So I wonder how he operated when the museum says that he would travel around and take these outdoor pictures with his horse and buggy and send it back to his wife in St. Mary's. We're a long ways away from St. Mary's.
Mm-hmm.
And considering the time period about 1915, I suspect that he probably had a car, a Model T or something similar.
Yeah.
But then I still wonder, did he just appear on the spot and say, "Can I take the picture?" And that would be a reason why the men aren't in it. Or did he actually go by one day and say, "I'm coming next week, and I take the picture," and get permission? I don't know those things. I wonder about it.
I do know sometimes when traveling photographers came into the area, they'd put an advert in the newspaper a week prior and say, "I'm going to come to the area. If you're interested, this is how you reach me." And then I'm sure he did like door to door as well. I feel like he'd probably get at least a few door to doors. But yeah, because we do have some examples in the newspaper of traveling photographers from London and even as far as Toronto coming here to take photos, and they just go around and do all of that.
The museum information in St. Mary's has that he moved out of that area and worked someplace else afterwards, but we're still pretty confident that we know the date of that picture.
And did your grandfather build the house, or was it already built when he came there?
I would think he built it. There is a picture of a horse-drawn wagon full of logs, and nobody really knows for sure whether those were the logs that were cut for this building. But I have that picture too.
That's pretty cool.
A copy of that picture.
That's really, really neat.
So this, of course, is the place where my dad was born and lived in that house. My grandparents lived in that house from about 1893 until 1920. And at that time, the house was abandoned, and they built a great big brick house immediately in front of that one.
So does it, I'm guessing it no longer exists?
Just the roof exists.
Oh.
Well,
Usually you hear just the foundations exist, not just the roof.
Well, again, I don't know exactly what happened. As I said, I didn't ask enough questions, but at some point in time, let me back up a step. I remember the house when it existed like that. It was still there immediately behind the brick house where my grandmother lived and in which she hung this picture.
Yeah.
This picture hung in my grandmother's living room until she passed away in the mid-1950s.
Yeah.
Anyway, at some point in time, my dad took it apart and moved the top part away from the brick house and used it as a granary. It is still there, but it's pretty well wrecked. I don't know why he didn't move the whole building, and when I got around to asking questions, I guess the only relative whom I thought might tell me that said, well, I think it was sinking into the ground. Like it didn't have a good foundation. When you say very often it's the foundation that's left, it appears that maybe this didn't have a good foundation.
Maybe it wasn't the case. It's nice that he salvaged some of it for the granary, though.
But it was a good, sturdy house.
It looks like it.
As far as the interior goes, you didn't see the rough-hewn logs there. The walls were lath and plaster, very rough plaster with horsehair in it.
Yep.
And at least what I remember from the upstairs, I don't think the plaster was ever painted or covered.
That'd be a very natural, lovely look. Yeah. And do you remember how many rooms were in there?
No.
It looks like at least the upstairs had a nice big loft area. And do you have a fond memory of this place, being there?
Well, as I said, as a little kid, it was there. And it was sometime in the time period when I was in elementary school, I think, that it was dismantled.
Okay.
I remember it was all locked up and I was told I wasn't supposed to go in there.
Sure, it was probably unsafe. Do you have any final recollections that you'd like to share about this photo?
When I came in possession of it, and my parents were gone and grandparents were gone, I did have copies of this made for all of my siblings and for this little girl who's my cousin.
Aww.
And my own copy is framed and hanging on the wall in my house now. But this one never was framed. This is, my grandmother had that hanging on her wall just by that string, just in the format that the photographer supplied it.
That's wonderful. Yeah. And is this property still in your family?
Yes.
Nice.
My brother was the one that ended up staying at home and farming that farmland. And the brick house that was built immediately in front of that is now occupied by my nephew.
And is that the one that did the history or enjoys history?
Yes.
Nice.
The farmland isn't in the family. As you know, things got such that farmers either had to get bigger or get out. And my brother, a few years ago, sold the farmland, but his son
House.
lives in the brick house that was built immediately in front of that one.
Sounds like there's a lot of memories in that house and that land. That's beautiful. I'm really happy you brought this in. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.